It's that debate, isn't it, about the permission-based opener? But I think seeing Joe's permission-based opener followed by Brandon's assumptive, that I just need 30 seconds to start talking about it, I thought that was a really interesting take.
Yeah.
Having said that, like, people on the other end of the phone, some people are going to let people do that. Some people are going to be like, look, Brandon, let me stop you there. I'm busy right now. So, I mean, we've spoken about the permission-based opener, and I think it's then the follow-up question. I think that's really important. And I think Joe did show that question. Yeah. I agree with you, though. I think more specific would have been better versus compliance versus regulation. Super broad subject. And it was about, do I know the difference versus, are there any issues there? So I think we could have dived into that pain probably a bit quicker. So, and I think that was the thing for me. But still, I thought really good opener.
Yeah. I
liked Brandon's straight into it.
I did too. I will try that. I'm going to try that on my cold calls and see how it goes. I think all three of them, like, they came on the show. They brought their all. They killed it. Their openers were all great. I mean, you had one that was permission-based opener, one that was an assumptive hybrid, and one that just was pretty much like confident, right? Steamroll in a sense. And those are all three different ways you can go about it. Everybody has their own style.
The ones where, like, we haven't spoke, cold call. Reality is by doing that, like, as soon as you get those yeses to that element, like that question or that statement, you then you give yourself so much time to then have the conversation, which I know in this setting with the 60 seconds, you can't quite demonstrate that. But, I think it was then that follow-up question to get the more information to open up the call. That's then the killer bit after that opener, right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think in Bo's case, like, the confidence just in the words, that it does make a huge difference.
It does.
It sounds like I believe what you're saying. You believe what you're saying.
Yeah.
And it makes not answering that first question harder, if anything.
Yeah. It makes you think for a second. But either way, Matt, I mean, as you can tell from the sign, we are officially in the debrief portion of the show. And I want to ask you, because since you are a mystery prospect, kind enough to hop on here this week, how was your first time getting pitched on the show today?
Yeah, it was good. Like, the openers, it was very similar to, I mean, I had 2 cold calls today, actually, funny enough. So I was like, it's like, this is my practice.
Yeah.
I heard them out.
Yeah. Were they good?
One was good. One was very irrelevant. So yeah, that was good practice for this, and yeah, it was good fun. It was a fun experience. It's not something I've ever done before in this setting. So
it's a new way of going about it. We're trying to be new here, at least something fresh. But as you know, and the audience may know, during this debrief portion, we like to go back in time, learn the stories behind influential sales development leaders like yourself. And it's always interesting to learn how everyone got started out in sales. Whenever you ask anyone, they have different answers across the board. But I want to ask you, how did you first enter the world of sales?
So my first entry point was in Australia, selling raffle tickets for the Surf Lifesavers. And yeah, one of the best jobs I've ever had. The education around learning rejection, like you learn it and you learn it quick, because you were getting hundreds of no's in a day, and it's face to face. And but yeah, incredible experience to start my career in. And then I suppose my first entrance to tech sales followed that when I came back from Australia to after 3 years of selling raffle tickets, might I add, 3 years, and then joined a company and began the traditional SDR career, cold calling, emailing, but also there was an element of meeting people face to face and actually running discovery meetings with my line manager.
Wow. So you went from door-to-door sales basically to cold calling, and obviously like then into tech, right? SDR management, all that good stuff. And you're right. I mean, rejection is a big part of the job. If you can't get that early on, maybe sales isn't for you, but any salesperson can tell you, right? They will get rejected on an average of 5 to 10 times a day. That's just the way it is, unfortunately. But that's what makes us stronger, right?
Yeah, really valid point. The reality is once you're in sales, you have to like literally accept the fact that now rejection is part of your life forever. Well, whilst you're in sales, right? Because people will say no. Like your closed won rate literally relies on rejection, right? So whatever you don't close is technically a rejection. Whatever you don't book is a rejection. So yeah, absolutely. You just got to embrace. Yeah. Just got to embrace it. Like, and also make it small. Make it small. Like, if it's 5 to 10 times a day, that's 5 small things that actually by tomorrow I'll probably forget, unless it's a real standout rejection using very interesting language and poetic, for example, we saw the other day, right?
Yeah. So exactly. It's part of any role, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but you were an individual contributor for about 4 years before making that leap into SDR management. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any tips or lessons really for ICs who currently are making that same transition into leadership for the first time?
Yeah, it's a huge change mentally and in responsibility, right? So I think if you're shifting from being a contributor to managing contributors, you've got to literally realize that you're no longer the main character, right? Which is a really fascinating thing to think about, because while you're contributing to your business, closing business or booking meetings, your number is you. Like, I've booked the most meetings, fantastic, I'm the best SDR. I've closed the most business, I'm the best account exec. With management, it changes massively. It's no longer about, oh yeah, I'm the best manager because my team are doing really well. It's like you want to help them become that main character. So my advice, as weird and as metaphorical as this will sound, is like, become a side character and absolutely embrace it. Become Gandalf, and let your team be Frodo and Sam or whoever, or whatever story you want. Because the better you can do that and help them, then they will be your success at the end of the day.
I agree. I think Jack Knight was on the show a couple of episodes ago, and he put it in a really good context. He said it was called servant leadership, where you are propping up the reps. You're not the reps' boss. The reps are your boss, because you're the one supporting them. You're the one that's going to be enabling and training and bringing everything to them. And I mean, I think it's very interesting because it's the same exact thing you're saying right now, right?
No, absolutely. Jack's nailed that. You're there to help at the end of the day. The term manager suggests you need to manage them, but really, what is that? I don't know if old school management is like, no, I'll tell you what to do and you go do it. But no, like any high performing sales team, if you see them, like they're just getting support and help. And yeah.
Exactly. What do you think was the hardest habit to learn or maybe unlearn when you first started out in the management seat?
I think the hardest one to learn was actually that shift to make it all about them. So like, it then goes from you having to deliver effectively to almost like you having to run one-to-ones effectively, make sure you are listening to them, make sure you're helping them, make sure you're finding out blockers effectively so you can remove them. It's really different to, if I've got a blocker that's stopping me from achieving something, I can make a song and dance about it. Like, I need to get rid of this problem. It's a problem. Get rid of it. But that I may misinterpret what that blocker is for someone else, in all honesty. So understanding where they're coming from, the situation, like you have to really just step back and be like, okay, well, let me put myself in their shoes and understand what they're experiencing so I can then effectively help them. So I think that was probably one of the, especially year one, that was one of the hardest things to learn, but it's such a powerful skill once you've learned it, I think.
I think so too. Yeah. You're able to nurture, not just in sales, right, but nurture relationships outside of work, family, friends, right? That's what it comes down to, I think. But after transitioning into a management role, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you went on to lead multiple SDR organizations. I'm sure you've experienced it more than I have. A huge piece of management is the training and enablement portion. And being that you've done this successfully for more than 5 years now, I guess, what are some of the biggest pitfalls that you see SDR managers fall into when it comes to training their reps, and maybe something you would recommend to help prevent or resolve them?
I think one of them is, and especially if you're going to be in this sort of role for a while, is, and I found this out at the start of last year, but join a new team. A lot of the problems are normally the same. It's building confidence on outbound. It's forever adapting emails and treating that like an experiment. It's tracking objections, making sure you've got the best objection handling models and answers in place. And so actually it becomes relatively it's the same. It's not the same thing every time because it's tailored to each organization. But I think one of the easiest pitfalls to fall into is to try and make a new stamp every single time. And so I think one thing I realized at the end of last year was like, I really need to start recording all my training that I create, because actually I'm just going to be able to use that again and again and again. And it's all about then tailoring it to the organization and then tailoring it to the people. So if you are in one of these roles and you're rolling and you take a training seriously, which, by the way, if you're in that boat, you're already top 10% of management, because the ones who take training seriously are always end up becoming the best.
Yeah.
But record it down and reuse it, because it's a lot of the training you'll find is timeless, and it'll save you so much time recreating playbooks every time. You'll be able to get there so much quicker again.
Yeah. Why not recycle it, right? And keep updating it, keep adding to it, as time moves on. And sales evolves. So having that base and then recycling it, keep evaluating it, keep adding to it. I think it's pretty good, right? It actually segues pretty solid into a question I had here, which is, what is sales upskill? And I guess, what made you want to start this type of like enablement training resource for SDRs?
Yeah, and this has been a bit of an interesting journey for me, right? So what happened was I wanted this resource where I had all my training in one place, and so I could access it again. So I created a website, was happy to pay the hosting fee, and just started creating it. And then, funny enough, when I was introduced to my current role at Thomas, one of the things I was told about was they were looking for someone who was passionate about training. And I was like, this is actually such a good way to demonstrate my passion for training, because how many people go and build a website for this kind of thing? Exactly. And since then, it's just been used by thousands of people, which is so flattering, but also so motivating to know that this is a useful tool. And it's become a training platform that, I introduce to people if people are looking for that sort of thing. You can access to cheat sheets and tools that just support things like cold calling, discovery calls. If you're an SDR looking for an interview, how to prep, medic stuff and things like that. But it's evolved since then, and so pleased I started it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to keep watching it evolve. I'm sure everybody in the sales community is happy that finally there's some sort of resource out there that's just quick to the point, one-page cheat sheets, cold calling, prospecting, all that stuff. It's pretty good. Cold calling obviously is a big part of your day-to-day, right? Managing the team. And you post a lot about it as well. That's why we're on this show today, right? But I remember we chatted a while back, and you mentioned that your first cold call was placed, in 2015 or 16, right?
Yeah, absolutely years ago.
Years, right? How do you think it's evolved over time? It's been 9 years now. What do you think has changed, and how do you see cold calling continue to evolve in the next 9 to 10 years?
I think the efficiency of cold calling since when 8 years ago is massively improved. And actually, one of my advisors, right? He was cold calling even further back, and he tells me how it's crazy how much it's changed since then. So everything's become way more efficient. You can go about cold calling so much easier these days. You can access data so much. You can find people's mobile numbers. So access to the person is so much easier. But then that comes with its own pros and cons. Access better, great, but that's the same for everyone. So it's little things that you need to do to stand out, be more quicker with how you go about talking about things. I think that's what's changed here, because people have less time, their attention span's shorter, because there's so much more noise out there. So I think that's the key, right? It's being more efficient with your own time. So make sure you're using the data that's good, so you can call people directly.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how do you then open up that call? And there's techniques that I absolutely love, and I hear them every day being super, super effective. And a couple of them were in the show today, which was nice.
Yeah, yeah. Permission-based openers. I mean, you have to try to find ways to be creative and also cut through that noise, because you're right. I mean, over time, cold calling has gotten saturated, and it probably will continue if you're doing the same stuff over and over again. And the only way to combat that is by, being that knife that slices through the noise, right? Um, I obviously I don't want to ask you, right, if there's one key thing you can do today, because I don't believe in magic bullets. There's not one thing, but if there is, a piece of actionable advice that you can give to any SDR out there today looking to be more creative and cut through the noise, what would you tell them?
I would, do you know what I would say? And, being that we're talking about cold calling today, is like treat it like an experiment. And yeah, I've spoken to a lot of people about this, and it's, the opener of your call, that's its own experiment. The pitch then after that, that's its own experiment. So treat it all as an experiment. So you're changing small variables here and there, but just go out there and then test. So if you've got an opener with permission, can I have 30 seconds of your time just to see if this is relevant? Test it. So, okay, I'm going to take that line and I'm going to use it every single time for the next 2 weeks. And I'm going to see of all the connected calls I've had, how many then let me speak? Exactly. Great. I've now got an output of that opener. So I can, is there another one I would like to test and see how that compares? And then eventually you'll find one that is just your go-to and you'll be so confident in saying it. And then the next bit is, okay, let's test the follow-up question. Is the question the correct question for the diving into the pain, right? And if it opens up the conversation and suddenly my average call time's increasing, well, I know this experiment's working. If it's not, maybe I need to change that experiment, change that question. So I think just obsess over experimenting with it and just think of it as like a numbers game. And it's really good because you'll take a lot of the emotion out of it because you're going to get rejection either way.
Of course. It's
a case of, okay, 2 out of 10 people heard my opener and let me speak for 8 minutes. Now we're cooking. We're cooking.
And A/B test everything, right? You said experimentation is the best part. That's what makes sales fun. Well, Matt, it's been an incredible pleasure having you on episode 5 now of the series. Time's flying by. You've been one of our earliest supporters, so I thank you very much for coming on today, showing the entire SDR community some love. For everybody watching, make sure to connect with Matt on LinkedIn. Stay up to date with all things SDR leadership, prospecting, cold calling, and sales upskill. Matt, anything you want to say before we close out? Any shout outs you want to give?
Look, I think the SDR and AE community, especially this year, having to do more outbound, it's scary at first and it will become one of your best skills that you could ever have, really. So stick at it. Big shout out to all the people who were on the show this week and actually the previous shows. I think this format is just unreal. I've really enjoyed watching previous and it's a pleasure to be on this actually. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for your kind words.
Hoping everyone just has a really good year for building pipeline.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the kind words. Thank you for all your expertise. And it's been a blast on the show. Thank you for everybody watching. And we'll see you next time on Get Pitched.